Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. And what you see here on the screen is an artist's depiction of what Melchizedek's temple probably looked like. And I had no idea that there was any evidence for a temple of Melchizedek, but there is. And it's in Jerusalem, but specifically the city of David. I'll show you on the map if you're not familiar with where that is in relation to like the Temple Mount and the rest of Jerusalem and stuff. But I came across this. I don't know if you guys watch this channel. It's called Israel, my channel. And this guy puts out really good videos. Just about anything you want to know about Jerusalem, the temples there. He looks into Ezekiel's temple. You know, when you read in Ezekiel, it has the essentially the design, the plan for the third temple. And he just covers all sorts of different things, and his information is really, really good. So I would encourage you to subscribe and check out his stuff. I was watching one of his videos about this temple that they found. I guess they first discovered it in 2010. And, you know, there's a part of this picture here that might catch your eye, right? If you've been to the temple, there's some pretty interesting things going on here, especially in the grain press area. And so I just want to show you what I found out. Let me know if you knew about this before or not. Put it in the comments below. This is news to me. But yeah, so let's get into it. Melchizedek's temple. Now, before I do, there's been a number of you that have sent me links to this LDS Living article. Why does this symbol appear 10,000 times in the San Diego temple? And this is supposed to be the seal or the star, or sorry, I think it's the seal of Melchizedek or the star of Melchizedek. I'm not sure exactly. Where you take two squares and then you overlap them, and then well, no, you don't overlap them. You put them on top of each other, and then you get this like 8-pointed star thing right here. So my video is not going to be about this. Originally, I was seeing if I could find any connection between this and Melchizedek's temple that was unearthed in the city of David, but I wasn't able to find any connection. And in fact, I came across this article or this paper, I don't know, from One Climbs, The Seal of Melchizedek, ? By Alonso L. Gaskill. He's an assistant professor of church history and doctrine at BYU. And he kind of actually goes against the idea that this would be the seal of Melchizedek. It's become a popular symbol. And yes, it is all over the place with the San Diego temple, and they've incorporated it with other temples as well. In this, he kind of like, I read through a little bit. I didn't read the whole thing, but essentially, from what I can tell, let me just read a few key things here that I highlighted. He said, there have been others who have reported conversations with Nibley on the subject wherein he stated the opposite of what he apparently told the aforementioned individuals. So basically, I'm not going to tell the whole story of this symbol, but basically they showed this to Hugh Nibley. He was a famous church scholar or it's LDS scholar. And he's like, oh yeah, that's the seal of Melchizedek. And so here it's saying not everybody had that same experience talking to him. There's been times where he said the opposite. And then later it says Dr. Matthews indicated that Nibley, quote, had little information about it as far as sources other than the mural. The mural is found in his book, and you can find this on archive.org and borrow for free. You have to set up an account here. But it's in Hugh Nibley's book called Temple and Cosmos, where you have this old mural right here. Okay. And it has a lot of interesting things going on here. You know, there's a veil, right? You have the hand of the Lord right here that's behind the veil. You have, this is supposed to be Abraham and Isaac. This is supposed to be Abel, you know, bringing his his offering, right? And then this is Melchizedek, right? So it's a very loaded image and mural, and you can see it has interesting symbols on the cloth. You can see them here on the veil, right? And then here in the middle, you have the seal of Melchizedek. And so that's what it's called here in the book. It says, the white altar cloth is decorated with 2 sets of gamadia, as well as the so-called seal of Melchizedek, 2 interlocked squares in gold. So here you have it here. And they have, I think, the colored version here. Not here. In the LDS Living article. Here's the colored version of it. I guess a photograph of it. So anyway, I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I'm a little bit shaky on whether this would be like if you could officially say like for sure that this is a Melchizedek linked seal. But I'll leave that to you. I'll put both of these articles in the description below. Maybe I'll do a video about it some other time. But yeah, I had heard about this before, the seal of Melchizedek, but I hadn't really looked into it too much. I was just like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's cool. That's the seal of Melchizedek. All right. So anyway, but let's get back to this temple. Okay. This is an Israeli website. In fact, I don't even know who it is because I can't read this. It says K-Etzion. So that's probably Zion, right? K-Etzion. Or no, it's probably Sion, because in Hebrew, I do know this, that the Z, I can't remember the name of the letter, but they use a letter that has a ts sound, like a ts, ts. So it's Sion, like that. Okay, so anyway, Eli Shukron and Yoel Bin-Nun, Matzevah temple from the period of the Patriarchs in the city of Salem, later the city of David. You know how it goes, right? You have the city of Salem, and then it becomes the city of David, and then it like expands and it becomes Jerusalem, right? Jerusalem. All right. So, I went through here and highlighted, but the highlights somehow kind of got messed up. So I'm probably going to just read most of this, but that's okay. Maybe I'll recognize some of the parts to skip. The archaeologist L. Shukron excavated in the city of David together with Professor Roni Reich on behalf of Israel Antiquities Authority for a period of 17 years. Interesting number. Among their discoveries was the large pool connected with the Gihon Spring, located just to its south, together with the spring's enclosure. I don't know if this is talking about the Siloam pool or the Shiloach pool. I'm not sure, but I think it might, actually, because it says that it's just south, and that would be... Because, like, if... I'll just show you where this is at. So let me go to BYU's Virtual New Testament. Okay, so this is the temple at the time of Christ. So this is the second temple. And if you look, okay, so this way's east, right? There's the Mount of Olives. And so right now we're facing west. Now we're facing south. And the Siloam pool is right here. It's south of the temple. And this is like a pilgrimage road that leads straight to the temple if you're coming in from the south side of the city. And Melchizedek's temple is basically like right here. It's basically like where my mouse is, if you can see this, like right about here, maybe even at the city wall. I think this article says something about it. I'm going to tell you something, okay? This was a hard video to put together. I was wanting to just like pump out a video, get ready for tomorrow. For you, it's today, and just be done. But no, it took me forever to put all this together and look through all this stuff. So somewhere around here, if we look on Google Earth, okay, there's the Temple Mount. We're looking northward, right? And here's east over here. You can see Gethsemane. There's Orson Hyde Memorial Gardens. Okay, you see that? Here's the Mount of Olives on the east. Here's the Temple Mount on the west. And then you go south. And this little thing of land right here, this is called the City of David. And you'll have to tell me. I haven't looked into it. I don't know if it's like a separate, what do they call it? Well, a separate city. I don't know if it's incorporated or not or whatever, or if it's part of Jerusalem. But anyway, this part right here, like these couple streets, essentially, is the city of David. When you do a search for Melchizedek, the Melchizedek temple of Melchizedek, it takes you right here to tours of ancient Jerusalem and tunnels. And it's basically in that location. So the Siloam pool is like, it's over here somewhere. And then to the north of it, you'd have Melchizedek's temple. So you see how close it is to where the future Solomon's temple and then the Herodian temple were going to be, right? Melchizedek's temple, Solomon's temple, and the Herodian temple, and possibly the third temple. I guess we'll see. So this is the area that we're talking about. So it's really close. It's really close. Okay, so let's get back to this. Okay, in 2010, an unusual structure, the temple, an unusual structure was uncovered just above the pool and the enclosure containing the following features. An entrance, here, I'm going to zoom in. Hopefully it won't mess things up. Okay. An entrance staircase from the east that leads to a flat surface hewn in rock with several parallel rooms. The most important of which is the room with the Matzevah in the central part of the building. So let's take a look at the picture. So here's the little staircase. And this stone right here, this is the Matzevah. It's basically a pillar. It's an altar. Not the same as this altar where he's doing animal sacrifice. The type of altar that you would kneel at, right? Which is interesting because we know, if you've been to the temple, if you're even familiar with the temple, you don't even have to have been to the temple. You know that our temples have altars. We don't have altars for animal sacrifice, but we do have these altars for ceilings and also in the endowment. When you're going through the endowment, we have altars in the temple. So, so this is facing west, like this picture right here. Okay, if you're walking into the temple and going up these couple steps, you're heading west. And then north would be that way. That way would be Solomon's temple if it was around at this time. And then south would be this way. So this temple, it's not really oriented the same way as the future temples, right? Because, maybe it is. I don't know which way you would call front. But if you go up here, like you go to this altar for animal sacrifice, then you go through here and you're in this room with the altar, and then you go through here into this room that they're calling the grain press. I think, yeah, the grain press with these interesting symbols on the floor. So if I were to guess, I would say actually that this is like pointing north, and I don't know if there's any sort of progression through this, but think about it like this. Let's go to, let's go here. Okay. In fact, let's go in the temple. So what you do, come on. All right. So first you have the court of the women, which is this big area right here. It has like these different chambers with different purposes. One of them is for Nazarites who are ready to finish their Nazarite vow. Another one is for like wood. Another one for water, I think. Anyway, you go through the court of the women, and then you go to the court of, I think it's the court of the Israelites, which is like once you go through this big door, if you're just like an Israelite man, this is as far as you would go. And then up here, I can't remember. I should just click on these things. The court of the priests. Okay. So we're talking about the Kohanim. Okay. So here is the altar for animal sacrifice, right? And then you go inside into the, this is the Kodesh, or the sanctuary, right? The holy place. So there's no altar in here, but you do have a table for incense, right? And then you have the showbread, and then you have the menorah right here. But I feel like this room would probably correspond with the altar room, because the incense represents prayers. It's like it represents the prayers of Israel going up into the heavens, right? And then finally, if you're the high priest, once a year on Yom Kippur, you're allowed to go into the Holy of Holies, and you do very specific things in here. And this is where the Ark of the Covenant would have been during Solomon's temple, but not the second temple. During the second temple, you just see the rock. This is the rock of the dome of the rock. Right. And so when you think about it like that, so you have animal sacrifice altar. Okay, let's go back. So out there, you have animal sacrifice altar. In here, you have this. Again, there's no like kneeling altar in here, but you do have the incense table. And then after that, you go into the Holy of Holies. Maybe that's what we're seeing here. And what's interesting is that you come in from this side. I'll tell you why that's interesting. So you come in from through here. Here's the altar for burning, and then you go into the what you might consider the Kodesh, or the sanctuary, or the holy place. And then over here, this might actually be the holiest spot in this temple, but they have indications that it's a room for pressing grain. So I don't know. I could be completely wrong. I don't know. Or maybe, I mean, in this depiction, there's kind of like a veil right here. So maybe it's that way. I don't know. But why I was saying it was interesting that the stairs are on this side, okay, that you enter on, like if the temple faces this way, you're coming in on the right side of the temple. If you're like standing right here looking this way, then you would enter the right side. You're right. And that's how it worked with with this temple. Let's go right here. So you see these big ramps right here. You'd come up here, and then you'd go through here. Then there's these two openings here that would bring you into the court of the Gentiles. And then you'd pass the soreg, or this fence basically that you can't go past if you're a Gentile. And then you enter the temple. There's like different gates over here around the entire temple. One gate is the gate of the firstborn, and they have different purposes. But essentially, you come in through the temple's right side. So that's a potential interesting parallel, if I'm correct, and I could be wrong. Okay, so so the Matzevah. The unique Matzevah is made of a thin slab of rock. So it's this thing right here. You see this? The stone Matzevah. This is the altar. The unique altar is made of a thin slab of rock whose width is a mere 5 centimeters. Its height is 55 centimeters, and its length is 85 centimeters. This plain slab of rock, which contains no images, was found placed on an exposed hewn stone, and it is held in place with strong supporting rocks that were placed beneath it in around all of its sides. Okay. And I guess you can kind of see that here. Like this is probably a separate rock. I don't know, but whatever the case, it's supported by other rocks. So you have a pile of rocks, but you have like this main rock up here. Okay, this is the pillar, the altar, whatever. Oh, you can see it much better here. Look at that. Yeah, you can see these other rocks. And I'm assuming, and it is an assumption, that this is probably where you would kneel. Right? It's kind of weird because I never really pictured an altar of this sort having kind of like because since it's like thin, it's like, you don't like want to put your arms across that or like rest on it, but maybe that's not how they did it back then. But there you go. An altar. Here's the top view. Okay. The altar room. So now the altar room, this is talking about like the fire altar, right? Okay, the slightly raised hewn square was uncovered in the corner of a room north of the Matzevah room. So we're now talking about, so here's the Matzevah room, and there's the Matzevah, and then to the north, and then in the corner, you see the altar right there. So we're talking about this. Okay, with a small drainage ditch adjacent to it. So you can see this ditch. In fact, on Etsy, you can buy you can buy somebody's recreation of Melchizedek's temple with an amazing looking Melchizedek right there. I couldn't do this, so who am I to laugh, you freaking jerk? I'm not really laughing. It's just it's cool. You know what? I would like to have one of these. So why am I laughing? I would like to have one of these. It'd be cool. So, but you can see here's the altar, right? They don't have anything there, but this would be a drainage ditch for, I guess, like blood, or maybe if you're pouring wine or oil on there, it would probably drain down this way too. So, okay, it's pretty cool. It's cool. It's interesting. This is not a promotion. I don't have a link. Well, I'll put the link below, but I won't get a commission for this. But you're going to have to fork out $250 if you want this. So you better want that pretty bad. Okay. And they seem to indicate an altar that was placed there. The small drainage ditch greatly strengthens this supposition. So they don't know for sure. But probably. The olive press. Okay, where's the olive press? The olive press is right here. Okay, and then if we're looking at this image, you can see the guy right here with the olive press. Now, I would remind you, if you've watched my playlist about the BYU Jerusalem Center and my openness to the idea that it could become a temple in the future, maybe not the type of temple that we use now, but a headquarters temple, or maybe just a very special functioning temple, a headquarters temple. What might interest you is when you go to the BYU Jerusalem Center. So here it is, right? It's on Mount Scopus, which is on the same ridge as the Mount of Olives. It's just a tiny bit north of the Mount of Olives. Has an amazing view of the Temple Mount. Guess what they have? They have stuff to make olive oil, the way that they would have done it back then. They have a wine press and they have an olive press. I don't know that they have a grain press, but here's a blog called Wandering Browns, and they took a picture right here. This is recreation of an olive press, as we explained in our Nazareth post. So you can check their blog out. But here you go. You see the depressions in the ground, I guess, where it would have collected or whatever. So it's interesting that you have this stuff at the BYU Jerusalem Center, right? I don't know how things are going to go when Christ comes to the Jews. But wouldn't it be interesting if they came over here and they were going to anoint him king? I don't know that there will be an anointing, but if there is, and I could see Christ permitting that, like, okay, yeah, now you recognize me as king. Now anoint me as your king. I am Messiah. Messiah means anointed one. And so what if they go over here? You know, BYU Jerusalem Center is ready to go. It has that stuff ready to go. And the people set apart to do that would make the oil, maybe in the ritual way that the Jews do. In fact, I think I remember on Israel 365, I covered an article. Let's see, Israel. I'm pretty sure that I covered an article talking about them making olive oil the way that it's supposed to be made for use in the temple, because you can't just do it any old way. Olive oil. Search, please. Okay. Prepare for a third temple with ritual olive oil produced for holy offerings. I know that they made some in order to anoint the high priest. I think that's the one that I may have read. Let me just see really quick. Maybe this is from... No, I don't think that this is the article, but whatever. If I find it, if I find it, I'll put it in the description below. Otherwise, just go to Israel 365 and search for it. So anyway, yeah, BYU Jerusalem, they have the stuff to make what would be needed for the temple. If there is in fact a third temple where there's going to be some of the same things, and before you stop me from saying that, we've read in the teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith about sacrifice, how at least for a short time it's going to come back. And I'm not going to go over that again. Just, we've already done a video about it, so it'd be interesting if they use the BYU Jerusalem Center's equipment to do that. That's all I'm saying. All right. The dimensions of the oil press are 220 by 155 centimeters. It is clear that only small amounts of oil were produced here, as the amount produced would not be sufficient for domestic consumption nor for public worship. The room behind the olive press. Behind the olive press is a small room. Let's take a look at that. I guess it's talking about this room right here. Is a small room probably used as a warehouse where many fragments of broken jars were found on the floor. Ceramic finds and dating. In the eastern part of the complex, potsherds that can be definitively dated to the 18th century BCE were found, which is the period, Middle Bronze Age, of the large fortification towers above the Gihon Spring and of the large pool that was uncovered south of the spring. Again, I think that's in reference to the Salem pool. We can therefore conclude that the temple of the Matzevah, or that altar, was an integral part of the fortification around the spring and of the pool, and that it marks the religious identity of the city to that ancient period, that is, the period corresponding to the days of Melchizedek and Abraham. That is just fascinating to me. Okay. Excuse me. The floor hewn into the rock of the rooms of this temple has no layers. It was very easy to clean during all periods of its activity. For this reason, only a few potsherds from the final period of the temple's activity remain. That is, from the 8th century BCE. Okay, the connection between these findings and the book of Genesis. Now check this out. The unique connection between the thin stone Matzevah, positioned vertically, and the oil that was prepared in the oil press found in the temple can be understood by examining the biblical story found in the book of Genesis. I have both of these pulled up, and I'll put the links in the description below so you can just quickly click over to that if you want to, like after the video or whenever. Okay, Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, quote, "Surely the Lord is present in this place. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven." Early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. Okay, so made an altar just like this. He basically made I keep forgetting the word, the Matzevah. I'm going to say Matzevah for now. According to the biblical account, Abram gave a tithe to Melchizedek, king of Salem, who was a priest of the God Most High. And you and I know he was not just a priest, he was the high priest. He was a holder of the Melchizedek priesthood, right? At this point, we didn't have such a thing as the Aaronic priesthood or the Levitical priesthood. Okay, and Abram gave him a tenth of everything. That is, he gave him a tenth of what was taken in battle. The tithe connections between this story and Jacob's temple, Matzevah, in Bethel. In that story, Jacob stood before the Matzevah upon which he poured oil and promised to separate a tithe in the future. Quote, "The Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up as a pillar shall be God's abode. And of all that you give me, I will set aside a tithe for you. Now, just as a reminder, Bethel, I have that pulled up. You can't really see it here, and I don't have a way to really, well, no, wait, maybe I can open this in a new, yeah, I can do that, okay. So, it's going to get a little pixely, but you can see Jerusalem is down here, and Bethel is up here, right? Beth or Bite. I don't know if it's like an old Hebrew thing, but like what I was learning is that it's pronounced Bite, maybe in Hebrew, in modern Hebrew. So like Beit Lechem, that's how the house of bread or house of bread. Anyway, house of the Lord, right? Beth and then El is God, and then Beth is house, or Beit is house. So it's up here. Okay. That's where Jacob set up his altar. Okay. The entrance from the east is reminiscent of other Judean temples. So yeah, the entrance is on the east, isn't it? Now remember. Okay, let's go back to BYU's thing. So this is for sure what I'm telling you right here. You see all the people, they're coming here to the temple. They wash over here in the mikveh, which is a ritual. It's basically a baptismal font, really, but Jews don't necessarily fully immerse. They wash their hands. They do like a washing, a ceremonial, a ritualistic washing before they enter the temple, right? Mikvahs were used and actually are used in Judaism for baptism. Like if you convert to Judaism, which is a much different process, the one thing that's similar is they do have you do a full immersion in a mikvah and then you become Jewish. So they do have like a baptism, but otherwise they don't do like a full thing for just like stuff like this. So you come in through the south, right? But there is the eastern way to go in. You know, you have the Golden Gate right here, otherwise known as the Shushan Gate. Right now it's sealed up. It's a big gate that's right here along this wall. And the Muslims sealed that up, right? But classically, it's supposed to be the gate through which the Messiah, both in Judaism and in Christianity, that the Messiah would come down from here down through to go into the temple. And then you see around the temple itself, it is walled off, and then there's an entrance right here. In fact, let's just go to it. And it's on the east, right? So if for some reason you were entering in through this way, this is like what you would think of probably as like the main entrance. Which is interesting because it's a lot like, if you think about it, it's a lot like the Salt Lake Temple. With the Salt Lake Temple, you don't just like go through the front doors. Those doors are sealed off. And I did a video about that. It's basically meant to symbolize that those are the doors for the Lord. You know, they face east, they face the way of his second coming. And so he would be the one that goes in through that way. For everybody else, you go through like a roundabout way. You go through the entrance, like say that this is the Salt Lake Temple facing east. You go through an entrance over here, which takes you down into a tunnel, and then you come up from underneath into the temple. So it's interesting that there's kind of like that same similarity where you have all these people that go to these various gates. Some of them go over here into the court of the women, right? Or you go to these other ones for different purposes. I did a big long video covering that. So it's very interesting. Okay. So the entrance from the east, right here, the entrance from the east is reminiscent of other Judean temples. And this is the direction of entrance that we find in other places in the Bible, as evidenced by the tabernacle and in Ezekiel's prophecy, where he rails against the sinners at the end of the first temple period, who stand at the entrance to the temple of the Lord, their backs to the temple of the Lord and their faces to the east. They were bowing low to the sun in the east. The entrance from the east is also found in Ezekiel's plan for the future temple, and God's presence will return to the temple from the gate that faced eastward. From Ezekiel's harsh words against the sinners, we understand that the belief in God expressed in the temple stood in stark contrast to the worshipers of the sun. So, like symbolically, it's like they're worshiping the sun that comes from the east. But when you're going through the temple, you start in the east, but you you head west into the temple, right? Most likely at sunrise. The monotheistic faith of the Bible arranged an entrance from the east so that the sun would rise to shine upon the entrance of the temple as if it were bowing down to the creator of heaven and earth, sun and moon, and all they contain. Other important characteristics. In addition to noting that in addition to noting the entrance from the east, in the structure itself, we find a sacred Matzevah, which is the pillar, with an oil press, apparently producing oil for ritual libation on the Matzevah, or pouring, olive oil onto the pillar or on the altar, together with the base for an altar, or the altar for burning, right, animal sacrifice, with a drainage ditch. These findings stand in stark contrast to Canaanite and pagan temples, which we are familiar throughout the area. A significant insight that can serve to explain this complex can be found in the verse of Genesis relating to the city of Salem. Now look at this. This part of the scriptures most likely, almost surely, took place here at this structure right here, which is only like right here compared to where the temple would be in the future. This is fascinating. Look at this. And King Melchizedek of Salem brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High. He blessed him, Abram, right? He blessed him, saying, "Blessed be Abram of God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who was delivered your foes into your hand." And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. In the following verse, Abram echoes the prayer of Melchizedek while adding the personal name of God. "I swear to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth." Now, when we're talking about the personal name of God, we're talking about Jehovah. And I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that I didn't know. Okay, look at this Wikipedia article. Jehovah is a Latinization of the Hebrew. I'll just say it. It's fine. I'm not Jewish. Yahweh, right? I do it out of respect to my Jewish friends, but so I didn't know that was the same thing. I call me stupid. I didn't know. So Jehovah is the same as Yahweh. So when you read the scriptures, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with this already, whenever you come across this in, I think specifically in the Old Testament, where the Lord is all caps, like capital L-O-R-D, that in the original would have been the name of God. It would have been Jehovah, right? So this verse, and this is the first one that I found. I did a search for, well, it's not here. It's before I did this one. But the first time that it shows up like this, all caps, Lord, is in Genesis 2. Genesis 2, verse 4. "These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created, in the day that Jehovah, God, made the earth and the heavens." You see how that goes. And then when you click on Lord, it takes you to topical guide, Jesus Christ, Jehovah. So anytime you see that, if you didn't know, you just replace that with Jehovah. And it probably was appropriate to switch that out to avoid just like how we say the Melchizedek priesthood, to avoid the repetition of the name of Christ. Christ is the God. Whenever we're talking about the Lord, or we're talking about the God of the Old Testament, we're talking about Christ. He was the God of the Old Testament. So anyway, okay, so right here, let's read that again. It says, in the following verse, Abram echoes the prayer of Melchizedek while adding the personal name of God, Jehovah. I swear to Jehovah, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. Both traditional commentaries and contemporary scholars agree that the city of Salem should be identified as Jerusalem, which after time will become known as the city of David in 2 Samuel 5:9. And the well-known verse in Psalms 76:3, Salem became his abode, Zion his den, connects Salem with Zion. So the formulation of Melchizedek's religious perspective as it appears in the book of Genesis is not a Canaanite formulation, despite the use of such familiar names as the Canaanite Phoenician region. As Professor M.D. Casuto has noted, we never find the name El Elyon, translated here as God Most High, articulated in this manner among the Phoenicians. They viewed these two names as relating to two different deities. We can conclude that the expression God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, articulates an early monotheistic belief that proclaims that El, God, is Most High. He is the one who created heaven and earth. Furthermore, he is the God who rules over the kings on the earth and delivers them into the hands of those who are loyal to him, like Abram the Hebrew. The temple of the Matzevah, built with an entrance from the east and located above the spring in the city of Salem, later the city of David, is most appropriate for this king priest who expresses a monotheistic view. We must not miss the subtle reference between the faith of the patriarchs and that of Melchizedek. So the patriarchs being, Noah, and then going back Enoch, and then Jared, and all the other ones up back to Adam. A subtle but important difference expressed in the addition of the name of God when Abram speaks. In the chapters relating to the patriarchs in the book of Genesis, it is evident that God revealed himself to them in various places throughout their wanderings, in that he also commanded them to travel by his power and with his help. And I suppose that's true. I don't think we know really of any permanent temples before the time of Melchizedek, like say Noah and before. Except for, I suppose, probably Enoch. I'm sure that he had a permanent temple. And then Adam in Adam-on-Diamond. I mean, essentially that was like the first temple outside of Eden. Eden representing, being a literal place, but also representing the presence of God. You could see that as a temple in a sense. But I guess you would say the first temple with a Matzevah or a altar. In my understanding, I'm not going to go into this here, but my understanding is that Adam-on-Diamond has both an altar for animal sacrifice, but it also has a Matzevah like this for praying. So Adam-on-Diamond, I guess, would have been the first place where there was a temple, and it seems like it was probably permanent in nature, because my understanding is that Adam and Eve, once they left the Garden of Eden, that's where they resided. I suppose for the entire time of their life. I don't know. We just don't have very much detail about that. So anyway, here's talking about how the patriarchs lived in various places, wandering, and to be fair, we don't really know that for sure. There's not a whole lot of detail in Genesis. But anyway, time and again, we find commands to Abram, like go forth, walk about the land, walk in my ways. Regarding Jacob in the dream in Bethel that ended with the erection of the Matzevah, the command he received was, remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. It appears that Melchizedek served as a permanent priest in a fixed temple dedicated to God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. Abram, who becomes Abraham, walks before the Lord, Jehovah, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, in all of his treks and travels, including in his battle to save Lot, his nephew. This is true of Jacob's travels as well, as evidenced by the temporary temple in Bethel, which he establishes when he leaves for Haran, whatever, and returns to on his journey home. The meeting between Melchizedek and Abram symbolizes the encounter between wandering and permanence. Well, I mean, okay, that's up for debate. According to your understanding website, that could be the case. Don't really know. Now, we've read in the Ensign where it seems like Shem, Noah's son, Shem, and Melchizedek are actually the same person. Bruce R. McConkie thinks otherwise because of there's a verse in Doctrine and Covenants where it seems to indicate that there were generations between Melchizedek and Shem. So we don't really know. But from Noah and before, I think that we can be pretty sure, that there was a permanent temple in the city of Enoch. Because it was a city, so it was a permanent place. They weren't wandering that we know of. They had a city, and so there probably would have been a temple there. And then Adam on Diamond. So that could be wrong. What the website is saying here. The fact that it takes place precisely in the city of Salem, that is in Jerusalem, has special meaning, which later found expression in King David's efforts. David made Jerusalem the quote-unquote end of wanderings of the Ark of the Covenant. Because remember, the Ark had it did not really have a permanent home for a long time, not until the time of Solomon. So during the entire time of Judges, the Ark did not have a permanent place. I mean, it was in Shiloh, but it wasn't in like a permanent structure. It was still in the tabernacle. So, in preparation for building the house of God, and in so doing, David returned to the permanence of the temple of God in Jerusalem, as was the case in the time of Melchizedek. It is for this reason that the Psalm 110, that depicts David as the conqueror who defeats his enemies and places him to the right of God, can also refer to him as king priest. The Lord has sworn and will not relent. You are a priest forever, a rightful king. Melchizedek, by my decree. The temple Geniza. A small number of potsherds from the 8th century BCE were found on the hewn bedrock surface, which served as the floor of the inner rooms. Inside a cave adjacent to the bedrock wall, west of the altar, in Matzevah room, a complete set of vessels was found. Okay, so that must be talking about... It said west of what? West of the altar and mitzvah room. So here you can see, like what I said before, it looks like there's like a room back here with there's like a veil. So I don't know. For all I know, maybe that's the Holy of Holies. I don't know. If they were doing endowments in this place, maybe this room would have been where they were doing endowments. I have no idea. Anyway, it's talking about this room, I think, back here. There's also another doorway over here on this side. So who knows? But whatever. There's a door back. There's a room back there. And there were a complete set of vessels were found, which is really cool. These appear to have been stored there from the time of the abolishment of the Matzevah temple in the 8th century BCE, that is, in the days of King Hezekiah. This is a direct testimony from the city of Jerusalem itself of Hezekiah's revolution to abolish Bamot, or high places. So if you remember, this would have been like pagan or polytheistic kind of like, sanctuaries and stuff like that. temples and stuff. So, but look at this. Okay, so look at this. So you have Hezekiah who's getting rid of these high places because Israel had started to participate in these foreign religions and worshiping other gods. So look at this though. We can see exactly how a special wall was built in the eastern side. The Matzevah was covered with dirt in a very careful manner so as not to damage it. And the whole temple was covered with stones and interred. The fact that the temple and its vessels were interred in such a careful manner indicates that even during the period of Hezekiah's revolution abolishing Bamot, this place was not viewed as an idolatrous temple, particularly because it was where offerings were made to Jehovah, the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. Abram's addition to the name of God served as proof to those who worshipped the God of Israel in the later generations that this was a holy place. The careful interment of the temple indicates that this was accepted as fact in the days of King David as well as in the days of King Hezekiah. So you know what that means? That means that if this is right, and it could be wrong, I mean, they don't know, but if they're right about this assumption, essentially King David, King Hezekiah and before, they would have known about this temple. This temple would have been there. I don't know that it would have been in operation, but I don't know, maybe. It'd be interesting to see what they did with this, or if they did anything, or maybe they just kind of left it alone, but didn't disturb it because it was a temple from the time of Melchizedek. It was his temple. I don't know. Okay, now look at this. Image 8, view to the west. So we're viewing, this is west. V shapes dug into the floor, and on the western wall of the room, the entranceway to the cave that served as the Genitza interment. So, okay. So this is the entrance to that storage area. Now, when I was watching this video by this guy, Israel, my channel, when he was talking about these, he was saying that they thought that maybe this could have been like a depression in the floor to help with okay, let's go to the BYU's thing. Look at this. I'm not very good with words, okay? If you haven't been able to tell, I'm not very good with words. So I'm just going to have to show you. You know, like the support beams, or like the things that you would use to support an animal as you're like slaughtering it. I'm just going to show you the picture over here. I guess that was pretty good. That was a good description. You probably understand what I'm saying. Okay, so like these things right here. So obviously it doesn't make sense with the way it's depicted here. But he was saying that basically these type of things, like at the bottom, would have had like that V shape for like stability. So you would have had like I suppose like a wood beam, and then at the bottom it would have had like a V shape, and you would put it down in here, and so that would hold the thing steady as you're slaughtering the animal. And I don't know, yeah, maybe, sure, maybe, I have no idea. But they're calling this the grain room. I just, there's not a whole lot to like really solidify what is going on in this room. Even if it is like a slaughter room or if it's a grain room, we don't know exactly what they were using this for. They admit they don't know what this was for. And even if it was for that, it still could have been symbolic. They may have, because I mean, when you look over here, that's not how it is in the second temple. It's just, these things that go down. Of course, it's bedrock, so maybe it's different, but why couldn't they just do what they did here and have them go straight down into the ground? I don't know. Were they not technologically advanced enough at that point? I don't think so. So I don't know. We'll find out at some point. Okay, now look at this. The Matzevah temple, so Melchizedek's temple, remained active in the city of Salem, i.e. the city of David, for 1,000 years. if this is all correct, Melchizedek's temple remained active for 1,000 years from the time of the patriarchs, so I suppose back to Noah, through Hezekiah's reign, longer than both temples together. Melchizedek's temple operating longer than both temples, both Solomon's temple and the Herodian, the second temple, the Herodian temple. Put both those together, Melchizedek's temple operated longer. Isn't that weird to think? Okay, so it should also be noted that there is no indication that any changes were made when David captured the city, nor even when his son Solomon built the temple on the Temple Mount. When the Bible describes the anointment of Solomon on the Gihon spring, it writes, "Then the priest Zadok," and in this video, the guy, I'm pretty sure he's an Israeli. He was like, isn't it interesting that Zadok sounds like Zedek? Zedek means righteousness. Melchizedek means righteousness is my king, or king of righteousness. So anyway, the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan had Solomon ride on King David's mule, and they led him to Gihon. The priest Zadok took the horn of oil from the tent and anointed Solomon. They sounded the horn, and all the people shouted, "Long live King Solomon." All the people then marched up behind him. According to this description, it is clear that the ark that was brought to the city of David and placed in the tent which David had pitched for it was close to the Gihon spring. You see where this is going? What else is close to the Gihon spring? Oh, the temple of Melchizedek. That is the place where David sacrificed burnt offerings and offerings of well-being before the Lord. We can identify the place of the tent containing the ark in the area of can we identify the place of the tent containing the ark in the area of Matzevah temple? Another area of hewn stone slightly higher has been uncovered to the south of the Matzevah room, and the additional room described above. The exposed area of 200 by 230 centimeters is only part of a flat surface that extends eastward to a length of about 530 centimeters, larger than any of the rooms in the temple complex. This hewn area, certainly appropriate for pitching a tent, is from a later date than the rest of the ancient temple, and its quarrying differs from the earlier stonework. It would appear likely that this is the place where David brought the Ark of the Covenant above the Gihon spring. That is so amazing. Can you imagine, even if they had added on to the temple, can you just imagine having the Ark of the Covenant in the extension of Melchizedek's temple? That is a really cool concept. Okay, based on all this, it seems logical that King David recognized the Matzevah temple as an early testimony to monotheistic worship from the times of the patriarchs. And of course, in our religion, we would see this as of course he recognized it as a temple, because, they would have recognized, I'm sure, that Melchizedek held the higher priesthood. This was what the church was before Abraham. He had the Melchizedek, he had the higher priesthood, and that temple remained all the way until they could build their temple, operating under the lower priesthood. Okay, so that of Abraham and Melchizedek, a priest of Most High God. This is what led David to sanctify the place of the Ark of the Covenant and to bring burnt offerings and offerings of well-being before the Lord in that place. Even when Solomon built God's temple, his holy place remained untouched, and its long-standing sanctity was respected. This helps explain why other Bamot, where God of Israel was worshipped, remained intact for hundreds of years. Only during the period of Hezekiah's revolution was this Matzevah and its temple covered and interred, together with many other Bamot temples throughout Judea. Conclusion. Thanks to the interment performed by King Hezekiah at the time of his religious revolution, we're able to uncover and view an ancient Matzevah temple facing east to west, together with an oil press producing oil for libation on the Matzevah. In doing so, we come into contact with 1,000 years of monotheistic worship from the days of Melchizedek and Abram the Hebrew until its interment in the days of King Hezekiah. So, it just blows my mind. It really does. I was going to read more from here, but this is kind of going a little bit long. I don't think it really adds too much onto it. But I'll link this in the description below, as well as these scriptures, these chapters, if you want to read them. Here is a blog that kind of talks about it, but I didn't find anything. I didn't find a whole lot out from this, but it is pretty long. It has a bunch of good like pictures and stuff in case you want to see more details. So you can check that out. Here's the San Diego temple. You can see from above, you have the Seal of Melchizedek. I wish I knew more about it, if it really was, because even if they have a hard time proving in a scholarly manner that it was the Seal of Melchizedek, if we have a prophet that says that it was, then it was. And my understanding from the LDS Living article is that President Hinckley accepted it as such, and that he decided to incorporate it into the Salt Lake Temple and others. If he was just going off of what Hugh Nibley was saying, then I don't know, maybe that was mistaken, but maybe not. Maybe not. I'll have to look into that further, and maybe it's not even possible to come to that conclusion. But anyway, the San Diego temple is the one that has that all over the place. Okay, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. BYU, Gamma. Oh yeah, in this book here, if you look at this, Temple and Cosmos by Hugh Nibley, they use the term gammatia and gamma, and that comes from the Greek letter gamma, so it has like this shape right here, so oh yeah, and then I was going to talk about this a little bit. I was just kind of like thinking about this as I was like looking at Melchizedek's temple. So we see here, they have a depiction of well, maybe not so much here. Up here there's other like murals and stuff of Christ with his is this his apostles? It says, a youthful Christ dressed in the royal purple blesses the loaves and fish, reverently held by his disciples, who wear white dalmatic with clavi and mantle. So you can see that they have these robes that have the gamma type symbol on it, which is interesting. Here's like it says the largest surviving example of a fine woolen talit or mantle with purple gammatia, or in other words, the gammas, right, woven in the corners. So you can see that this is interesting, right? Now, in here, he calls it talit, and that's why I started thinking about the Jewish talit, known as the Jewish prayer shawl. So this is an interesting thing, and it does seem to be a type of parallel, possibly between our church and Judaism. I think it'd be worth going over this. Okay, what is a talit? A talit is a Jewish prayer shawl. As per the Bible's instructions, the rectangular talit has fringes attached to each of its four corners. These serve to remind the Jew of God and his commandments. Right? That's the purpose. To remind you of God and his commandments. And by extension, you could say the covenant, right? God's covenant with his covenant people. God and his commandments. Sorry. The talit, ideally made of wool, is most often white with black stripes running down two sides of the garment. called tzitzit in Hebrew. Each fringe is made of 4 strands looped over to make 8 strands in total. The talit, which is the main thing, the talit is draped over the shoulder like a cape, with 2 corners at the front of the wearer and 2 at the back. Talit, who and when. Technically, the talit should be worn all day, but that is not practical in today's world. And so, check this out. Another garment developed, the poncho-like garment that is worn under street clothing all day long. This garment is most commonly known as tzitzit, but it is also referred to as arba kanfot, or 4 corners, or talit katan, small talit. The talit is still worn during morning prayers, although the tefillin, which Jewish men wear on weekdays from the age of 13, the tefillin is that like black box thing that they put on their foreheads. The talit is worn all day on Yom Kippur, and in many communities, the chazan, the prayer leader, wears the talit during other services as well. In Eastern European Ashkenazic communities, boys wear the talit katan from as young as 3 years old, which is pretty cute. That's a cute idea. But only begin wearing the talit gadol, the large talit, regularly after marriage. Sephardic and Western Europeans, however, begin wearing it much earlier. Only men are obligated to wear the talit, which is interesting. I never knew that. Techelet, the mystery of the blue thread. In ancient times, the talit would have had 2 kinds of threads attached to the corners: white wool, or whatever the garment was made of, and blue wool. This blue wool, known as techelet, was the hallmark of nobility, and in line with the talit's purpose of reminding the Jew that he is a member of God's kingdom of priests. So, and you know what's interesting about that? So you can see the parallel. You can see the parallel between them and us. Royalty, kingdom of priests, a reminder of being a covenant people of God and his commandments, so on and so forth. You can see. You can see. Now, what's interesting is that if you didn't know this, the flag of Israel is based on the talit. It says here in this Wikipedia article, in preparing for the first Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897, Wolfson wrote, quote, "What flag would we hang on the Congress Hall? Then an idea struck me. We have a flag, and it is blue and white, the talit, the prayer shawl, with which we wrap ourselves when we pray. That is our symbol. Let us take this talit from its bag and unroll it before the eyes of Israel and the eyes of all nations." So, have you ever thought about the Israeli flag in that sense? Right? You think about our version, you think about their version, and they used their version and turned it into a flag. That's the flag of Israel. Have you ever thought about that? That is the flag of Israel. Is their special clothing that they wear under street clothes to remind them of commandments in God and being a royal nation. Have you ever thought about that? Isn't that interesting? So I just wanted to bring that up. Maybe we can read a couple scriptures here. So the Torah commands us twice regarding affixing fringes to our garments. First, God tells Moses to command the children of Israel to take for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and they shall affix a thread of techelet on the fringe of each corner. God then specifies the reason why we should wear the fringes. This shall be fringes for you, and when you see it, you will remember all the commandments of the Lord to perform them, and you shall not wander after your hearts and after your eyes, after which you are going astray. So that you shall remember and perform all my commandments, and you shall be holy to your God. I am the Lord your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. It's really neat. It's really neat. Oh yeah, I pulled up the Temple Institute just to basically prove that they don't have like an altar that you kneel at here. These are the people that would build the third temple if that came into being. And they go into great detail of what took place in the second temple and Solomon's temple. You may not know that there's actually a series of rooms that go around the sanctuary in the Holy of Holies. And they actually don't really know what they were used for. It's these rooms right here that have the X's right here. You could make a full circuit around like this, these like compartments, and they don't really know what it's for. And then you have a sealed off compartment right here. And on the corresponding side, it's a staircase that goes up to the roof. And then on top, you have a completely empty attic. And I've done a video about this. This corresponds with our temples today. Not every temple, but the first temples of this dispensation, like the Kirtland temple, it had, because you have basically what you have here is you have two rooms the same size stacked on top of each other. Now this bottom room is divided into other rooms, but if you take this, you have a parallel up here in the attic. And that's what you have in the Kirtland temple, the Nauvoo temple, the Salt Lake temple, so on and so forth. So when you look at those temples and it's like, those don't look like the original temple. No, they actually are a lot more like it than you might think. So, yeah, okay. That's going to be it. Right? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be it. All right, so if you're new, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.